Hi, everybody. Today, the subject is huge size caregiving problems that arise every day, but really aren't problems that we think about until they show up on our doorstep. In this video, I will answer caregiver questions on how to deal with huge sized caregiving problems. And I'll share two problems along with how these happen and steps that you can take to solve them. I'm Pamela D. Wilson. You can visit my website, pameladwilson.com, for online courses, articles, over 150 episodes of my caregiver podcast. It's called The Caring Generation. You can also join my caregiver support group. It's on Facebook, and it's called The Caregiving Trap. So what are huge-sized caregiving problems? Huge-sized caregiving problems are the issues that have the potential to really turn a caregiver's life upside down. They're problems that are emotionally distressing and honestly physically exhausting. So here are examples of two of them. Let's say that you've moved aging parents into your home and you've been caring for them for a number of years. Or maybe you're just caring for a spouse, you're caring for parents who live in their home. But you realize that something has to change because you can't keep doing what you're doing much longer. So the conversation is moving a spouse or a parent to a care community because it's not realistic for you to put more time in to give up your job because maybe you support your family or you're supporting your parents. So you're kind of in this rock and a hard place between my parents need more time and more care and I can't give it or I don't feel like I can give it. The number two situation is maybe you're worried about a sibling or one of your parents who's caring for the other parent, neglecting them or taking advantage or not really doing everything that they should. And admittedly, this can be because of burnout or exhaustion. So it may not be your sibling's fault or the fault of your other parent, but in some cases, it's intentional. So these are also situations where caregivers don't know what to do and they have this huge size problem and they're thinking, I don't want to make the family situation worse. I don't want to cause a lot of, chaos or stress, but yet you're stressed by the situation. So I'm going to share stories about both of these and again, some ways for you to think about it and ways for you to resolve them. So let's go back to number one, which is moving an elderly parent or spouse to a care community and having these conversations. And let's say that you have, and the person's like, no, I'm not going to move. I'm not going to do it. Yet you know that you can't keep providing the care because all of this time and effort that you're putting in is placing your mental health at risk, your physical health at risk. And you're getting sick and maybe you're having to call off from work or you can't, take care of your family, your children, your spouse. You have all these worries. But the person you care for is making you feel really guilty for not wanting to take care of them, or they're saying that you're going to abandon them, or you may be in another situation where you're a spousal caregiver and you're not in control of the marital finances. So in a sense, you're at a disadvantage because you may need your spouse's money to pay for the home that you live in, the groceries that you eat, the electricity, all of that. So let's first discuss one of these situations where you're not financially dependent on the person you care for. In reverse, they may be dependent on you for money or for time. These situations can be really emotionally distressing because until you can get in your mind that it's okay for you to be the priority. It's okay for your marriage to be the priority. It's okay for you and your spouse and your children to be the priority over care for a spouse. And the way that you get there is ask yourself, who should be the priority? Should your aging parent and their care and their needs take priority over everything else in your life? Is that really practical? Now, in some cultures, This is the way that it's believed to be or the way that it should be. But that's not in all cultures. And that isn't to say that if you come from a culture that believes this, that you have to continue to follow those cultural beliefs. Everybody has a choice. And truly, it's only the caregiver that can answer this question, whose life takes priority? Now, if your parents don't have money and they do rely on you, then you want to investigate Medicaid or Medi-Cal programs in your state that differ by the terminology to find out what options are available for care. And you want to do that long before you get in the situation where you're burned out and exhausted. Now, if on the other hand, you are that spouse dependent on a sick spouse's retirement and investments, this is way more complicated. And for this reason, I advise all women, regardless of your age, don't ever become financially dependent on your spouse. Have your own money, have your own savings, have your own accounts. So let's say that you are this spouse, and this happens because I talk to spouses in these situations who you're caring for a husband or wife and they need 24/7 care. Maybe they're abusive and they hold the purse strings. So you can't say, well, I'm tired of caring for you. I want you to go into a care community, because they're going to be like, well, I don't think so. I'm the one who pays the bills around here and you're living off me, so you're going to care for me. So again, at that point, you have to decide whose life is more important. If they can't survive without your care and you leave, they're going to have to make a choice. You're also going to have to make a choice, though. So what are your choices? You can stay in the situation until your spouse dies, or you can choose to leave, to separate, or divorce. Now, if you haven't worked and you don't have money, this can be a challenge because you're going to have to find out a way to financially support yourself. You're also going to have to find a way to find legal advice to give you all the options before you can even make a choice and you understand what your choices are. Now, it's interesting because there's a term out there these days called gray divorces. Gray divorces are becoming more common in people after age 50 who maybe have been married for a long time and they realize that the only thing keeping them together were these children who are now 18, 19, 20. They're in college, they're out of the house, and this married couple has absolutely nothing in common anymore. So there's a lot of landscape changing with regard to marriages and gray divorces. So all these situations are so complicated. This is why these are huge sized problems. So if you're in a marriage and you're caring for elderly parents, look at your marriage. What is it going to be like for you and your spouse when one of you needs care? Is there money available? Is one spouse going to say, oh, no, you're going to have to take care of me. I'm not going to move to a care community. I'm expecting you to be this 24/7 caregiver like we're doing for my parents. All of these discussions are so important to have in caregiving so that you can avoid these huge sized problems. Now let's go to number 2, which is the abusive sibling or parent, one of your parents taking care of the other parent who is burned out. And again, they're in the same situation of the person they're caring for doesn't want to move. You have to go back to have those conversations. But let's say that it is truly a situation of abuse and you're watching this and you don't know what to do. And maybe you've had conversations with your parents about, the brother or sister who may be living with them or taking their money or being abusive, and your parents don't want to do anything about it. What you want to look at is, has this been a lifelong pattern? Has this been going on for 20 or 30 years and nobody ever really paid attention to it because your parents at that time didn't need care and they didn't need their money for their care? If so, your parents may have caused the situation. And if so, your parents need to be the one to resolve the situation. Have they done their power of attorney documents? Is this son or daughter, your brother or sister, a power of attorney who's abusing the situation? Or can they appoint you or one of your siblings who has their best interests at heart? And then you work a way out of getting your siblings out of that house and having them become independent, having their own money and their own jobs, much like a spouse who hasn't worked during an entire marriage. Money in caregiving is expensive. Money in needing care is expensive. Paying for it is expensive. finding ways to pay for it if you don't have the money is time consuming. And that's where Medicaid and Medicare and Medi-Cal come in. So when you look at all of this, the best path forward really is to talk about potential situations, what can happen, how you're going to deal with it. If you are in a situation where your siblings or a spouse is abusing a spouse, you may have to get the police or adult protective services involved or an attorney involved, be able to help your parents out of that situation if they agree. If they don't agree, there may be nothing that you can do because everybody does have the ability and the right, as long as they are making good decisions and they don't have Alzheimer's or dementia, to make bad choices. So know that you're not alone. These situations happen in so many caregiving situations because it's impossible to look at what life is going to be like in 10 years or 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. These are not conversations that families talk about until these situations arrive. And then the problem is a lot of things have already happened to complicate them. So if you don't have experience caring for grandparents, you may not expect any of this. You may just be thrown into it. If you are a caregiver and you're caring for grandparents or elderly parents, look at your own life and look at how their life situations might happen to you and what you can do about it and how you should plan and what conversations that you should be having today. So if you're in any of these situations, there are 2 zero-cost programs on my website, PamelaDWilson.com. One is a course on how to care for aging parents, which really applies to taking care of yourself. The other one is a course about guardianship, which can talk about these abusive situations and what do and do you need an attorney? Can you take care of this yourself? There's a lot of information there. The requirement is your time and going to my website to find the courses. I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Thank you so much for being here. Please share these videos with other people that you know looking for hope, help, and support. I will see you all again soon in another video.